Let's get you all the latest developments coming in from the G20 convention. Well, in the latest, all the speculation is now over on the joint communique that has to be adopted by all the countries here at the G20. There were worries and concerns whether there will be a clear dissent from Russia and China as far as those paragraphs were concerned that included the war in Ukraine. The Prime Minister has spoken. He said consensus has been built. He's lauded the Sherpas and all the track 2 dialogues that have been taking place ahead of the G20 summit. Remember, there have been over 200 meetings in 50 cities. There have been finance track meetings, Sherpa meetings, and been continuous negotiations in the run-up to this. There were serious concerns whether there will be a dissent note, whether there will just be a chair statement at this G20. But of course, there's been success, as Amitabh Kant a short while ago in his press conference said that this was the most ambitious G20 presidency, and it has a massive India footprint in the joint communique. Before we get in the details of what this joint resolution looks like, let's listen in to what the Prime Minister said.
नई दिल्ली G20 लीडर्स समिट डिक्लेरेशन पर सहमति बनी है। मैं इस डिक्लेरेशन को एडॉप्ट करने की घोषणा करता हूं।
Right, so that, of course, is Prime Minister Modi there speaking about the joint communique. Let's tell you what is the draft resolution and what's been adopted. Well, the government says that there were 83 paragraphs on the economy and issues of consensus. There were 8 paras on geopolitics. All of this has been adopted unanimously by all countries, and this is, of course, a major achievement. There was not a single chair statement or a dissent note or a footnote. 112 outcome documents were also adopted. In terms of the key achievements that have come out of this draft resolution, we can tell you that it has been agreed upon to strengthen the multilateral development banks, an agreement for making them better, bigger and more effective. It also talks about the regulatory framework for cryptocurrency assets and digital public infrastructure, debt resolution under a common framework, as well as climate financing, which is a very, very close topic to Prime Minister, that is sustainable growth and climate action and climate mitigation. All of this, of course, being supported by the countries in the West, America, as well as other nations during the course of this negotiation.
The declaration that the leaders have agreed on today focuses on promoting strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive growth. It seeks to accelerate progress on SDGs and has come up with an action plan accordingly. It envisages a Green Development Pact for a sustainable future. It endorses high-level principles on lifestyle for sustainable development, voluntary principles on hydrogen, the Chennai principles for a sustainable and resilient blue economy, and the Deccan principles on food security and nutrition, among others.
Meanwhile, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that under India's presidency, no one should be left behind in the pursuit of development. So they have taken into account the particular needs of the global south. She further added that they have crafted solutions to meet the requirements of the divergent interests of varied groups for co-development. India's Finance Minister also endorsed the Financial Stability Board's high-level recommendations for the regulation, supervision and oversight of the crypto assets activity and markets of global stablecoin arrangements. She further added, India has received tremendous support from G20 members across the table. Meanwhile, India's G20 Sherpa, Amitabh Kant, has also said one of the biggest achievements for the summit is what they have achieved on women-led development, with a massive focus on women empowerment and gender equality.
agreement on the need for a better, bigger and more effective MDBs, because the developmental demands from all across the globe is so high, these institutions will have to be better and bigger. This is also going to contribute to enhancing representation and voice of developing countries in the decision making.
Right, joining us now on this broadcast is my colleague Siddhant Sibbal, live from the G20 International Media Center. Also on the show, Jessica Stone from Voice of America, who's also joining us live. Siddhant, first to you. Clearly, over the course of the last 24 hours, there were many concerns about whether there would be a joint communique or not. There were, all kinds of reports coming out. But yesterday as well, Amitabh Kant and other government officials were confident of getting all nations on board and having a joint communique. There were questions, of course, raised on this as well. Siddhant, tell us more.
This entire G20 summit today is the first day, and we know that Indian side was able to chalk out a joint statement with, of course, the mention of Ukraine, and a substantive language has been used when it comes to the joint statement on Ukraine and other issues. But particularly talking about Ukraine, we know that last year in Bali there was a mention of Ukraine, but as compared to the New Delhi statement, not only this time the fact that the UN Charter has been mentioned, Turkey's support when it comes to the Black Sea Grain Initiative has been mentioned, but also essentially the concerns of all the warring fractions have been put in some way or another, and there is no footnote. So of course it's a big diplomatic victory for India, but just not Ukraine. The focus also remains on cryptocurrency, on climate change, on issues related to the global south, and the biggest outcome has been the inclusion of African Union at the G20 summit. We saw the Comorosian president taking chair, and this is another feather in the cap of New Delhi.
Right, Siddhant, stay with us. Jessica, I do want to come to you, but before that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. We have Volker Stanzel, former German ambassador to China and Japan, also joining us on the show. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll be coming to you shortly. But Jessica, I mean, the Americans have said all along that they will support consensus building at the G20 led by India, clearly saying that this is a strategic partner for us and we do not want to derail what's happening at the G20. Tell us what's happening from the American side. How did this consensus building happen, given the West was so against to the Russia war in Ukraine, and they wanted specific indications of that in the communique?
Well, the Americans clearly made a concession here, because this is a communique that does not say war against Ukraine. It says war in Ukraine, inferring that both parties, both Russia and Ukraine, are equally responsible. So that's a concession on the part of the Americans and on the part of many of the Western countries who had previously held up these communiques, particularly in Bali, over the use of that word in versus against. Now, the White House was very quick to say on a call earlier today with reporters that they feel good about the communique, that they did get what they wanted in terms of condemnation of invasion of territorial integrity, condemning any country that should take territory by force, and also underscoring that a just peace should be based on the UN Charter. So those are the wins in the White House's eyes. They also take a win with respect to the future of the G20, right? Because that has been at issue, especially in Western countries. How relevant is this body? And they note that the very countries who have also attended the BRICS summit are also those that are leading the G20 going forward. After the Indians surrender the G20 presidency, they'll be handing it to the Brazilians, and then next the South Africans, before going back to a major developed Western country such as the United States. So I think that's significant as well.